everybody, as much as praise as we just bestowed upon Clare, give a hand for y'all. Like, yes! Incredible weekend. Incredible weekend. We made it to the last session. I think this palpable sense of relief, but also, I don't know about anyone else, like a little bit sad. I know we're actually going into a really fun part of NLC convention weekends, which is the awards dinner, but I will say this, which is, this is a great last session to gather everyone once again to this final time around this theme of where stories become action. And I think that there's one person's story, but is also now become everybody's story with NLC about illuminating the actions that will go forward in the new Leaders Council community. And no one better than Clare Bresnahan English, our president and CEO. So clap it up one more time. But, full disclosure, everyone, my history with Clare is quite deep because I met her when I was a 2013 fellow. She was my institute director there. So someone
UN's my chickadee.
Chickadee, yeah. For sure. And then she recruited me to take over, and the rest is history in some sense. But I mean, for all that, it's been dropped throughout the weekend, Clare, but your NLC street cred, even beyond being president and CEO, is pretty deep. So not only institute director, institute chair in DC, but chapter director in DC, Spark Talker, give it up for my Spark Talkers.
Yes, the Spark Talkers.
And then lead facilitator for a really long time. And you were a lead facilitator for seven years? 7 years? Whoa, there are lead facilitators out there as well. And I saw you, Clare. I saw you in the lead session. You're trying to get in on
my little bit of lead on.
Yeah. And honestly, it is also always very sad to walk away from lead. I'm wondering, from all of the NLC experiences, all of the lead experiences that you've had, I mean, what really stands out the most for you now that you're in this role?
I think, first, y'all, thanks for giving me this time to be able to talk with y'all. I feel like when we were planning convention, I think it's really important that you get to know your leader, right? It's a form of accountability. It's a form of community, so just thank you. I've been trying to have as many conversations as possible, but we felt like this is going to be the way to be able to have as many conversations as possible at once. And back to UN's excellent question of, I'm essentially a lead nerd. I can't get enough lead. We even in the board meeting this morning led an exercise on life maps so the whole board could experience lead. And I think it's foundational to our program because it's, the number one thing is always the power of our stories. That's why it's the theme this weekend, is because it's rooted in lead. It's our shared experience. And, I think I don't want it to sound cliche, but every single time, I mean, it's whatever identity, whatever cause you're representing, to be able to hold space and witness that, and to witness it for yourself, and to finally truly be seen, even by a group of strangers. All of us, can you just pause? You can remember your moment of sharing your life map, can't you? Right? I still can. It was the 5-year anniversary of my dad passing away from a heart attack suddenly when I was in college, and terrified, particularly because I didn't get in the first time, so shout out imposter syndrome. But to be so witnessed and to seen and to, I just think there's something of where good peer mentor of mine, Candace Stansel, who's also on the board from Atlanta, we talked this morning about vulnerability and how too much and for too long, primarily focused in supremacy and white supremacy, there was a command and control style that allowed for no vulnerability, no forms of weaknesses and honesty and authenticity. And I think part of what's so powerful about lead is it's tapping into a new kind of leader who is really finding and knowing that there is strength in your vulnerability, because it allows us to finally open up and connect to ourselves and to each other. And I think that is part of what makes us so special than, of course, any of the other leadership development organizations that we're involved in, is that because even though we don't all know each other when we came to convention, like, there is a level of unspoken trust that I don't even know if we're conscious of with each other in the room. And it's partly, or a lot of it is because of lead and because of that experience of sharing our stories, and also like taking the big risk of envisioning what you want your world to look like in 10 years, right? You can also remember your dream day. It has had many different names throughout the years, but can anyone right now, like, can you raise your hand if you can think of something you wrote and it's come true? Because I can. I'll tell you a story of a Chicago alum who back in 2010, 2011, wrote down on her perfect day exercise, I want to be a New York Times bestselling author. Her name is Levy Ajay, and she's now a 2 times New York Times bestselling author, NLC Chicago alum, right? So the power of saying your dreams to yourself and then allowing other folks to hold space and to support you along the way, that's us. And there's just no other community that's like that. So I think leaning into that is really important. And then even recently, how like to Candace's conversation we had on Thursday about how your identities shift and how LEAD provides space for that. Like, I've even been thinking about practicing what I preach. And one thing that's different from when all of us gathered together in 2019 in Des Moines is that I'm a mom now. And like, I know. And I still, parenting is such a complex, layered piece and I'm still even understanding, like if I was gonna come in and do a LEAD training in 2023, I would still be processing, what does that even mean? It's this, becoming a parent, becoming a mother is like being cracked wide open. And to be able to, even as when you're a facilitator, thank you to all of our LEAD trainers in the room, by the way, and the work that you do. Right, you're always still growing, and so I do still on my own, like every year around January, do my own type of mini LEAD exercises myself because we're always still growing and learning.
January, favorite time of year if you're a chapter leader or lead facilitator, for sure. That was just the first question we asked, Claire, so you'll hate it that I'm already going off script, but I learned stuff about you today at the board meeting that I actually didn't know because and I'm thinking about what you just shared, and so you go through the LEAD exercises every year, and I'm wondering if you had the experience that I think so many of us have had, particularly when you do Dream Day, and you write down this Dream Day, and the things that you're looking forward to, and you think that you're trying to manifest in the future. But there's always a question I ask myself, and I wonder if you ask it too, which is sort of like, is this real or is this a story? And so it's a little bit Oscar for some of the things that we talked about and want to share, but in service of sharing openly, is there anything that has been on your Dream Day, like from those exercises that you kind of wonder about, like, can I make it happen? Like, is it real?
I mean, part of my dream is to make this a multi-million-dollar organization that's properly funded. And so it is, like, we are America's best kept secret. We have all these institutions and elites are saying, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Can you just please come to NLC convention and meet every single person who's sitting in this chair and understand that we are the answer to this country? So yes, I do have, so there's some times where historically NLC has, I think, always been underfunded for the resource that it is in this country. And so that does feel like a very big dream. But now that I've even shared it out loud with you, I have no doubt that it will happen and that you will see this incredible evolution of NLC over the next 3 to 5 years because of it. But yeah, does it feel scary as someone who, like, I fundraised for the first time in my institute? I had never raised more than like $100 through my Girl Scout cookies, and then had to go on and use that skill to found an organization called She Should Run. Like, I'm not a born fundraiser, but again, it goes back to sharing and advocating for the stories and the people, right? Like, when we're fundraising, when I try to get in the zone, I think about you. I want you to be resourced. I want you to stop having to worry about, like, the receipts and are these cupcakes too much and, like, can I afford an honorarium for this speaker? Like, I know that's BS, and you need to be focusing on some of the issues we've been talking about in the forums. That's all a distraction, but this is part of the issue in our infrastructure right now, is that as proximate leaders, we've never been fully invested in. So we need to keep investing in ourselves, and I'm going to be working day and night to make sure that this organization, that you are properly respected and therefore properly invested in this country.
Thanks, Claire. Oh, and so much of this storytelling, and we're going into like a little preview, put a pin in it, everyone, for the action coming up, right? But talking about your past as a little bit further past, like, so because of your long history in NLC, but 3 years ago in Des Moines was when it's like a Clare on a stage sandwich, because like at that convention, it was you being presented as the new president and CEO, and a lot of time has passed and we're here, and so during that time, a lot has happened, and I'm wondering what it has been like for the last 3 years as you have moved into this position, and I mean, I guess we're still in the middle of a global pandemic,
yeah.
y'all. I
Purgatory.
think.
We're in
And so
purgatory.
all of those impacts, like how has it been like during that time?
Well, I know that even just starting in Des Moines, I really wanted to be lead trainer, intentional about how did I want to show up in this space? Where was I going to put our energy? And so I knew that what I had to start first off, like any good lead trainer, is to listen. So for anyone who wasn't engaged yet around 2019 to 2020, I really spent like my first 9 months doing tons of different feedback sessions, listening tours with different teams who are helping us through our first ever strategic plan and branding. And I'll say that, to be honest, we did different report outs, but I think it's important to share, like what I heard a lot and what I still hear sometimes are 3 main sentiments. One is like either frustration and fear about where is NLC going, where's the sustainability, how are we going to be able to maintain our chapters, and then particularly through the pandemic, of course, everyone's managing this big micro and macro unprecedented event where there's so much loss and pain to be carrying at once, to then also be carrying your chapters. I want you to know that we saw you and we felt you. But then also one of the main sentiments I heard was love. Like deep, deep love for each other, for your cohort, for your chapters, for the applicants and the fellows that you haven't even met yet, for the vision of what you know that NLC can be in this country. And so taking from that, just every single day I've had just really deep sense of responsibility of managing us through and navigating through the pandemic. And a big testament goes to folks like our staff who, y'all, 5 to 6 staff at any point in time. You've met amazing National Programs Committee members. Our board of directors have been incredibly supportive of I come into this role. And I have to tell you, I would not be here. And I don't think NLC would have been here without our board of directors. If you're on the board, can you raise your hand so folks can come say hi to you at some point? Thank you. So, I will just say, like, moving through it, I will just reiterate again the power of listening and being vulnerable and being in those, I can see some folks here where we were in listening sessions together and being able to just take that in. And then the real work comes in. You listened and you absorbed, and then how are you going to actually do something about it, right? Because how often are you with people in power? And I have to understand that this role is a position of power in our organization. And then they don't do anything about it. So really trying to work and manage the short-term needs while building towards the long-term vision and doing things like trying to build in better financial infrastructure for us, trying to build in more customer service approach for our chapters, and really understanding that this is a volunteer-run organization. It's our volunteers who are our lifeblood and doing as much service. And I know we still have a long, long way to go, but knowing that we and the staff and the board are absolutely committed to you, and I hope we all can really feel proud of each other that this is no small feat. I mean, the percentage of nonprofits that closed their doors through the pandemic, the fact that you were able to still recruit your chapters, that you had virtual, that you were still building community, so that when we come out on the other end of this pandemic, when the discrepancies in our society are even worsened, that democracy is at stake and we're still here to be able to fight back and come back stronger, that's just incredible. So I say this a lot, and I just do hope it comes from the heart, and you know that it's just the honor of a lifetime to be able to serve you. And we're going to keep listening, we're going to keep working, and keep being here to be held accountable to that process.
Thank you. Yeah, and I, as someone that has been on the NPC with so many other fellow NPC members, it's been hard to see how much you all have struggled, and also many of us being still in our local chapters, and so honoring the how much, like, the really Herculean effort that the chapters have been going through too. And I'm wondering, you don't have to disclose as too much, because sometimes it's a little bit like vegan or real meat sausage making, right? but truly, is there like a specific moment during the pandemic? I'm wondering that, it's a little bit of behind the scenes so that chapters can sort of see how the struggles you've been through, and it might be too fresh because I think like by no means is this over for our organization, but I'm wondering if you would like to share anything in particular that maybe people don't know.
Can I share two?
Yeah, of course.
Keeping us track on time. Sorry.
That's my job. I got it.
Can never not let the job go. Okay, so I'll say is that first is I really, one of the first memories, and I wonder if you have this memory too, of when it really hit you that this is a pandemic, that millions of lives are gonna be lost. Like, our lives are never gonna be the same. And it was when I was out in LA, we were going to go visit one of our national board members, Bob Abernathy, at Shout Out LA chapter, and it was end of February, so the West Coast was starting to have more outbreaks than the rest of the country, and I just started to see like folks were buying up water, and there was already different protocols happening within the cities, and I think the day we left San Francisco was the last day that anyone, before the lockdown and whatnot, and I just remember within my soul the feeling of dominoes just going, and all the work that we had been doing in the last 6 months to like really get ready for this convention, increase the type of national donors we were going to have. Again, the dominoes just started falling, and then I knew, we're coming up against March, and you all had different institutes coming, and just realizing like, there goes the dominoes, and then also realizing like our community are the folks who are going to be losing loved ones to this, and it was just all in this one moment. And I think, you know, and those are the moments in leadership when you have to try to hold space for the pain for yourself and community, and finding your way through that. And just thank you to everyone who's been there for each other. And I don't know, it's only gratitude. And I'd say the other thing, this is more personal, but also, I guess also NLC related, is for anyone who's birthed, they might have had this experience as a birthing person, is when I had my son, it was an emergency C-section. I had never really had major surgery. And I came out of it, and I like immediately went into postpartum anxiety in a way that I had never experienced anything like that before. And I have to say that it's also just a testament to this organization, to this board, that I was given 3 months to heal, to bond with my son, to understand what is this motherhood thing, and all the toll that it takes. So I think in some ways just showing examples of how we still lived our values when times were tough, and living progressive values is harder and requires more resources. And I just think I don't know, I guess that's one really personal example of where I feel like NLC really lived its values through the pandemic.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Y'all, you don't have to, thank you for clapping after everything I say. Not necessary.
I talked to them all before, Claire. That's why they're doing it. We've been prepping them all, and you all are great. No, I mean, talking really about the testament to the type of volunteers in our community, the type of board members we have in our community, and just the community at large and the organization. You've kind of hinted at it with a lot of your responses, but like, what truly for you differentiates our community, the New Leaders Council community, from any other organization out there, nonprofit?
Number one is the people. Like, during all those listening tour meetings and whatnot, or whenever, it's like, it's the people. At some point, I want to be able to have swag where it's just like NLC, the people. It's just, where else do you meet people who are from so many different identities and lived experiences, or who work from so many different industries, who are here trying to figure out, I don't really understand what you do in tech, but please tell me, how can we create a better world together? Or are focused on different issues and can understand that we can accelerate progress when we're all connected and linked up. I really, truly have not seen another model out there that's like that. And I also think it's our leaderful model. How many leadership organizational trainings have you been through where it's still upholding supremacy mindsets of command and control style, where there's one charismatic leader who's going to come and save the day? That is not how change happens. It's a leaderful movement where it's different ripples in a bucket that keep growing and infecting each other and evolving. And that's who we are. I mean, even the very model, like the programs being designed and really evolved by people who went through the program. People who went through the program lead the program. We're still such a very mostly volunteer-run organization. And I've tried really hard. And again, I know we have a long way to go, but to make sure that we as headquarters don't perpetuate those kinds of systems and styles of leadership that we're all trying to model a different way of doing in our own lives. So I think that's very, very different about us. And ultimately, I also think it's the curriculum. Like, I know, how many times is this woman going to talk about LEAD? But truly, when you go down to that beginning workshop and the kind of unprecedented trust and relationship building that it creates, nothing like that. And I think more and more we need to keep figuring out how we lean into that more for our programming model overall across the Institute, but also how we tell our stories to our future applicants, how we understand ourselves as alumni. I think those are the three key people: the people, the model, the curriculum.
People, model, curriculum.
Yes.
Yeah. And lead facilitator, acknowledgement break for lead facilitators again, but also not only Eric Dussault, Russell Hobson, and Ayanna Williams, who are new incoming lead trainer, but also Leah Weiner, who I know is here too for
Leah, are you in the room?
She's in the room. Maybe she's in the
room.
room.
In the back room? You doing work? Anyway, Leah, one of the founding mothers of our lead programming.
Yes, yeah, so much. And so that really, I mean, I feel like if we're using past, present, future as sort of like a framework for our conversation, like you had mentioned you want NLC to be a multi-million-dollar organization, which is what it deserves now. But what does that look like for you? And what's your vision for it in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yesterday I said I envision you in the rooms where it happens, right? Like, I envision us being able to make sure that not just the White House, but state capitals. I mean, think about how Jersey is like, you've taken over basically every single government institution across your state. It's quite impressive. Show us and tell us how. There's really this piece of where I want us to be funded properly, where the work of the Institute is a flywheel. And what we're really spending a lot of our energy on is organizing and movement building. Like, Rakeem, I'm looking right at you, who runs, movement building, who runs an incredible organization, Alliance for Justice, working on court and judicial reform. And how do we make sure that, like, just on the opposite side of our values, institutions and systems, with my C3 hat on, has been building for decades and decades many different organizations and institutions that are at least looking at the supply chain of democracy and have been funding for decades, not just 10, 20, 40 years.
So ready for your Fast Five, Claire?
I think.
Okay, great. Let me go. The last book you read.
Last book I read. I'm currently always reading about 4 or 5 books that need to be finished. And so 2 that are on my bedside table right now are, fiction is The Sea Garden, which my lovely 92-year-old grandmother recommended. So anything Nana recommends, I have to put on my list. I'm only on like chapter 5. So far it looks spooky and scary, Sea Garden, so we'll see. Thank you, Nana. And then second, more nonfiction book is Adrienne Marie Brown's We Will Not Cancel Us. Highly recommend AME's work, but also this, it's a long essay that really goes into the complexity of how do we fight for each other rather than with each other. Really recommend that read.
Second, favorite podcast?
Okay, serious one is 1A with WAMU, because shout out American University, my undergrad. Ooh. Are you an AU grad? What? Okay, I didn't know that. All right, sorry.
That was your serious one. Did you have this is not a very fast 5. It's kind of like a moderately paced.
Yeah,
five.
yeah. Okay. Oh, right, you're right.
It's okay.
When have we ever known me to be able to answer in one word? Let's see. Oh, my less serious one. I guess I just started listening to Just Curious. That's how I heard about Kim Kelly, that we heard from. She did a really great podcast with on Just Curious.
Okay, favorite
Getting
snack.
Curious.
This should be fast.
Oh, favorite snack.
Maybe it's not fast. Moderately fast.
Flaming hot Cheetos.
Y'all, I did not know. There are a lot of flaming hot Cheetos in the prep room. Quite a few.
Yeah.
Favorite city that starts with C in Ohio?
Oh, Cincinnati. Sorry, Columbus. Sorry, y'all.
This is my favorite Fast 5 because this should be real fast.
It's okay. When we're outside of Ohio, we love each other. And then when we're inside Ohio, the rivalry is intense. Yeah.
So C-City rivalries aside, the final Fast Five, moderately paced five. Your favorite NLC DC fellow who has ever done a fireside chat with you.
You and Lee!
Only an inelegant and self-centered segue, and actually like sort of a side kind of response to Shaniqua's really good question. Is like, what do you do after? Y'all, I joked that I was dragged kicking and screaming into the NLC community, but one thing that I really want to acknowledge Claire for as a leader is that she asked me when I graduated from fellowship. I didn't know what to do either. I was just like, I really liked this, but I don't want to do anything. I think like I never do anything. I was just like, I just kind of like participate and I move on to the next thing. But you asked.
And not voluntold.
Yeah, and you made me think about, so like, did you enjoy this? Did you like this? And then you asked me again to take over as chapter director, which I did for several years. And I was just like, I mean, and I will say that, like all of you have experienced, it's never easy, but it really helped me step into leadership in a different way. And I don't know if I would be here with you or doing the things that I'm doing in like my non-NLC life too without you. So, and then you asked, then I tried to get out, and then you asked me again. She asked me again, everybody. And it's because you inspired me to what you were doing. And I wonder, you know, like how many of us as leaders, whether we label ourselves as leaders or not, how many times we ask someone and we ask ourselves. So I want to thank you for asking, Claire, always, and never being afraid to ask and empowering us to ask ourselves why we're leaders and how we're carrying forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you like to leave us with any last words before we party at the awards?
Oh gosh, it's gonna be corny. It's gonna be so corny. Buckle up. This is it's just such a work of love. I was talking to you and I was like, is this gonna be weird? But I just wanna say how much we as staff just deeply, deeply care about you and where we're going. And just thank you. The honor to be able to be in service leadership is an incredibly meaningful way to be able to, we had the StoryCorps conversation, right, where you're like, your work is not your life, but you've been able, through this community, to be able to give me such a beautiful gift to be able to serve in a way that really does fulfill my life. So thank you very much. Now let's go party, okay? Yes. Enough talking. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.